I will be stealing this piece of art and painting over it. This is my painting and I don't approve, suggest or support stealing anyone else's work. However, when it comes to your own gallery of images that you have made yourself, I hope after this video you will see a whole lot of new possibilities in all the art that you have already done. This is a great way to get started for anyone who wants to start painting but has a real fear of empty white canvas. I'll also go over how you can use this technique when working as a concept artist, because it's something I have yet to see talked about, and it's a really effective way to use your time, especially when you're knee-deep in pitching a project for production. So this is something that I have actually used myself many times over the years. The great thing about starting this way is that you don't have to deal with the scary white canvas. I know I'm not talking for everyone here, but for me, the most challenging part about painting is always starting. It seems really scary to start painting because I don't know if I will reach the level of my previous painting. When I start with an already done painting, I can kind of trick my brain into thinking I have already started and now I'm merely continuing that work. Here are some technical tips I can recommend for your next art theft. The most crucial practical tip I can give you is to use a version of your painting before you have done your color edits. When I'm doing color edits, I usually use a ton of layers for it, so usually I make a duplicate version of my file right before I start editing the colors. So this is a painting I made for my art course, and because I made a full editing tutorial for the art course, I had a version of the painting before the color edits were done. I didn't start on the final version of the painting, that way I would immediately screw myself over for having colors that don't have editing room. If I started from the finished piece, then the palette would be too saturated to work on, with light and dark values of the colors already used, so there would be no way to tweak them later. And that would make the entire painting process really difficult, especially in the last parts of the painting. So even if you're planning on doing this later, this tip is something that you can still put to use in your next painting. Before you tweak your painting colors for print or social media, leave a duplicate version of your file, just in case you want to use it later, without the color edits. I don't think there's any point in making the same painting again, so whenever I steal one of my paintings as a base, I start the next piece in a way that pushes me into different outcomes. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to go into Edit Canvas and change the aspect ratio of the entire canvas. If you're working on portrait orientation, expand the canvas horizontally, like I have done here, to turn it into a landscape mode or a square. Basically anything that's different to your starting point works. Another way to push the painting into new directions is by quickly painting prominent elements that create a different shape language. That's why my first brushstrokes are so large. That's also just a speed tip in general in the beginning phases of any painting. When you do these first moves quickly, it's easier to detach from the constraints of your previous painting and those ideas and start searching for new and exciting ideas. One way to make a remix of a painting like this is to use lasso selections to move big elements of your painting around. This way you will also preserve more of that original hue variety and texture. More on this later because it's really important. So what's the benefit of this in a professional setting? When you have extensive enough of a portfolio, you can use your art as a convenient, practical tool to get everyone on the team on the same page before you even started sketching anything. So this is a very quick way to make everybody see what you're aiming to do before you even start doing it. For example, if I'm working on a project that brings to mind one of my own paintings, I simply bring it up as a style example before even starting the work. That way we already have a clear idea of what I will be making before I have drawn a single sketch. Of course it's easy to pick all kinds of Pinterest pictures from different artists, and this probably happens to you a lot if you're a freelance artist like me, but I always explain that if we use one of my own paintings as a reference point, then I can guarantee that the painting look will get there because I know the techniques I have used. And I think it's safe to assume that my clients want a painting that looks like my painting because they contacted me in the first place. So I don't think I'm pushing my own way of painting. I'm just kind of assuming that the product that I can give them is the kind of product that they will want. With this painting, I let myself go into this slower experimental mode, and I wanted to get these traditional looking brushstroke textures for certain elements in this painting. So that's why I started developing this new brush set. I was specifically inspired by old anime and the poster colors that they use for backgrounds. So during this process, I was developing this process and I wanted to get those sort of dry brush strokes where you can see individual strands of brush hair when the brushes get dry. Having these textures overlap each other in a painting, I think that's a really cool way to build visual interest even on flat surfaces. My next point isn't in any way tied to these specific tools I'm using, but when you're painting over existing work like this, it's much easier to build your color surfaces to be rich and hold the eye with texture, because you can use all of those layers of color and that hue variety that I was talking about earlier in your final piece as well. So you don't need to completely paint over everything. If it works with what you're making right now, leave it in there and let that hue variety be a natural part of the organic look of your final painting. You can do this with any brushes, even the default ones that are already in Procreate or Photoshop. But the easiest way to build these sort of textures is to use brushes that have a little bit of grit to them, like this, but can be used at 100% opacity. Because digital paint doesn't show through like glazes in an oil painting do. You have to rely on optical blending, where you have this rich surface with different brushstrokes, but when you zoom out, all of those colors blend together in your eyes and form this one color surface. I think these sort of surfaces are just much more interesting to look at because they're not perfect, they have their own life and history in them. And especially when I have art like this as a print on my wall, I just like that layered look that holds the eye for much longer, especially in areas where I want people to be looking at for a long time. But when it comes to surrounding elements like the sky, for example, I think it's fine that that is quite flat, because I don't want the eye to linger in those empty spaces for too long. They are there to give negative space to the entire piece, and that's also serving a different composition purpose. When painting on your own art, you can take advantage of the existing hue variety in your base. If at any point your colors seem to get too crazy, you can bring the color harmony back by adding layers of your main colors over any areas that are competing with the mood you are creating. All you have to do is look at your painting and ask yourself, which colors here are my favorite ones and fit with this mood and this story that I'm telling, and then just use those colors to paint over areas that are conflicting with your message. My starting point was an island, and here I'm doing another island. I like islands, okay? That's not the point. I'm getting off track. What's practical about this method is that if you're working on a set of concept images, especially when you're looking for variations in the design, this method can be a really handy way to cut hours of time. I've also used this technique when I'm working on a set of concept images, and this way of working makes that set look consistent almost automatically, because your starting point will always bleed into the end result as well. This starting point can also work when developing multiple shots depicting the environment design in the same region. So for example, when you're doing world building and you show this kind of a set of images to the production team, it's much easier to understand how these concept pieces fit together when you're doing a world that is bigger that can be fit into just one single concept image. Now, I know there's probably some easy way to say what I'm thinking that isn't as provoking, but damn it, I'm gonna say it anyway. It's my channel. There are other reasons to paint beyond growing your skills. I know that a lot of art students are listening to this, and yes, this applies to you as well. All of these tips can help the painting process be more efficient, but I hope this won't be your only takeaway from this. You might be working on a commission or doing call-out shots for a concept piece, and they will only push your skills to their breaking point only sometimes, not every single time. You might have a message you want to say through your art. That alone can be enough of a reason to finish a painting. Even if you're an art student, every image does not have to be an art exercise. And I'm an art teacher, so I hope that counts for something. Remind yourself why you started. Remind yourself why you want to keep going. That is also extremely important. I'm not saying that you can't learn new things simultaneously. You probably will, but it's important to acknowledge that art also has plenty of other uses and purposes. Sometimes your experience of making that painting is an important reason too. Here's a different kind of art exercise for you. Next time you sit down to make some art, try to separate what you want to make from what you could draw or paint today that would get you excited about making art. What kind of creative project would feel good when you're making it? Not just what you wish it would end up looking like. That's a different purpose. It feeds a positive feedback loop in your brain that engaging with your creativity leads to good experiences. Everyone can learn to paint, but only some learn to listen to their creativity. And I think that's the difference between somebody who is just interested in art and tries it for a while, as opposed to somebody who tries art, finds joy in it, and becomes an actual artist. It becomes part of who they are. It becomes part of their identity. Stealing my own art like this has helped with my efficiency, but I want to manage your expectations here by saying that it doesn't mean that my paintings get finished super fast. I had around 15 hours of footage when I started editing this video, so even though it was easy to get into the flow of things, I still spent a whole lot of time making this painting, and that's a great thing. This is the part I hope you will find appreciation for. When you cut out boring or scary parts of the process by experimenting different techniques like this, you will have all that energy to put into the fun, meaningful parts of the painting, like in this case, design. When I started this way by cheating the beginning part of the painting, I could spend all of that time in the design. It didn't make the painting process faster, it just made it more enjoyable for me. I spent so much time thinking about the design of this building, adding a variety of different plants on the beach and just existing on this island. And that was only possible because I still had plenty of enthusiasm in the tank for giving this piece all the love and care it deserved. When I got new ideas to paint the trees differently or wanted to add new elements to make the house look more cozy, I didn't complain that the painting is taking too long. I was grateful that it let me stay in this place for a bit longer. To have this experience, shading some sparkly waves on this sandy beach, seems like such a small price to pay for it. It was so cheap that I didn't feel like I was just stealing art anymore. I felt like I stole an entire vacation. I hope you go into your gallery after this video and see all the new possibilities that you already have in there, and I will see you in the next video. Keep painting!